Alright, so we're looking at Apple Logic X. Now this is the software that I use, the multi-tracking software that I use for all these jam tracks that I do every week. And I've been using this software for 3 or 4 years now, and it's just awesome, and it keeps getting better. Apple keeps coming out with new versions of it. If you can't afford Logic, which I don't remember the price tag, I think it's maybe $200, $300. If you don't want to spend that money, you can get GarageBand, which comes free with your Apple iOS. So that's another option. And this is very similar to GarageBand. It's just sort of this has a little more bells and whistles, if you will. You can do a lot of what I'm about to show you though in GarageBand. You could probably do most of it. But anyway, let's go through this. So this is a 4-track jam track that I pulled up. This is something that I started a while ago and just never finished. But you can see this is a typical looking jam track. It's got a guitar track, a drum track, an organ, and a bass track. Now it might have two, when I finish it, it actually might have 2 guitar tracks. It might have one that's playing rhythm and then one that's playing lead. But anyway, that's what I have for this. And that's kind of what it looks like from a tracking perspective. I'll go into some more detail in just a minute and show you how you lay down the drums and all of that. But the first thing that I do is I always determine this. This is the BPM, or the beats per minute. That's your tempo. That's where you start. You start with the tempo. Unless you're just doing a rough demo or something where that doesn't matter. You always want to determine your tempo first. And you can kind of play around with it. So here's what happens. If you have this option clicked, this is your metronome. You can see this little icon of a metronome. This is what it sounds like. Oh wait, you know what? Hey, let me turn off all instruments. So the M means mute. So these are all muted. So you can just hear the click. Now that's what's telling me the tempo. If I didn't like that, if I wanted it to be faster or slower, I could come in here and make this number less, the less beats per minute, obviously the slower, or if I wanted to speed it up, I would adjust this number. So that's what determines the tempo, and that's important. Now this number, this 1, 2, 3, 4, that's your count in. So that's another one that's important to have clicked on when you're recording, because what that'll do is it'll give you a 4 count. It'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can start your part. So anyway, that's just what those are. I'll go ahead and turn that off because we won't need that for the rest of this. So now the way that this works is I would start by determining the tempo. I would turn on the metronome, and then I tend to lay down the guitar part first, and then I build everything around that. So in this case, I'll let you hear what the guitar part sounds like. I just clicked this M, which unmuted it. So now these 3 tracks are muted. This one is not. And here's what it sounds like. So you can see what I was working on, and actually I might finish this at some point. It was going to be a kind of a cool, kind of jazzy, bluesy rhythm thing. And so that's all I came up with to that point, was that little simple rhythm. Now on top of that, I laid the drum track, and I did that next. I always kind of do once I get the guitar and I get it in, going right along with the click track. In fact, here's what it sounds like with the click track. So you can see it's right on the beat. Once I do that, then I lay in the drum track. Now I'm not a drummer. I don't know how to play drums, but Logic comes with this great little feature which is called Drummer, and it's so cool. I think this is the coolest thing, especially if you're trying to, to do your own song, create your own songs. It allows you to audition different drummers. So what I did was I clicked on the track here. The Bluebird is the name of the drum kit, but these are all your controls for drummer. And I can choose if I want it to be kind of rock. Now Apple is, in typical Apple style, they make this very simple for you. So if you want it to be, songwritery, R&B, electronic hip hop, whatever. Most of the time I'm either in songwriter or rock, and I can adjust what I need from there. So in this case I was in songwriter, and then I have different drummers. Now you don't have a lot to go on. I'm using Darcy. I don't even know. I mean, they were being creative in how they describe these drummers, or how you can select from them. But different drummers you select play differently, and so that's kind of what they're they're introducing to you, the non-drummer, is they're showing you, hey, if you like this Darcy person and like the way that they play, you can kind of stick with her, him. I'm not sure. It looks like a her. So anyway, I've got Darcy, and I use Darcy a lot. And then these are some presets for Darcy. So I can do Lost at Sea. Now, the words mean nothing, but let me just play some of this so you can get a feel for what happens here. So here, I'm going to unmute this. And that's the one I'm using right now. Fits nicely. Now watch this. So you can see how it changes the feel. So anyway, what you do. Let me go back to where I started. Actually, was it here? So what you do is you select a preset, get it close to the feel that you want, and then you adjust it from here. So this is another really cool feature. This allows me to, it's very simple and very intuitive. If I push this little ball up this way, the drummer's gonna play louder. If I push the ball this way, the drummer's gonna play softer. If I go over this way, the drummer's gonna play a more simple rhythm. Or if I go over here, they're gonna play more complex rhythm, meaning more fills and more thrills and things. And you can go anywhere in between. So that's what this is. It's a little adjustment thing. And it's just really cool because it's very intuitive. And if you want it to be a little quieter, you can bring it this way, maybe a little more quiet and simple. You kind of go over here. And so that's really how that works. And it's like I said, it's very intuitive. Now the other controls are over here. You can control these different presets for this kick and snare drum. So by default, these two are selected together, and I have these different options. I can give you a sample here. So here's one kick snare. Listen to this. So you can see what's happening. It's subtle, but it's changing kind of where the kick and the snare come together. Now this is where I can either choose the hi-hat, a cymbal, or a tom, and so that's going to give it a different feel too. So let me show you the difference. Here's your hi-hat. Here's your cymbals, or here's what it sounds like with toms. So you can see that just by playing around with these different settings, you can get all kinds of different feels. Now what's cool over here is there's a swing dial, so if I want this to be more of a swing, I can literally just dial in as much swing as I want. Or if I want there to be more fills, I can dial those in as well, or less. There's another option to add percussion, so if you want hand claps or maracas or even a tambourine, you can add those on top, and you can select any of these settings here to change the different styles of percussion, so it's really flexible. One last thing to point out, if I click on there's details. You can go into ghost notes and things. I don't usually go into that. I usually I don't usually have a whole lot of time to play with this stuff. I try and get it pretty close to something and then just kind of move on. Okay, so moving on, let's take a look at the organ track. Now I'm going to go ahead and unmute that so you can see what that sounds like. So you can see it's very subtle. I've got it turned down quite a bit. And that's just I just wanted to create a little bit of ambience in the background. And if you want to adjust the volumes of each of these tracks, you can do it here. These are volume controls. This is your balance, so you can go left or right. You can pan it. Or you can click on this guy up here, which is more of a traditional mixer board. And I can see all of those tracks. So see, here's my guitar track, here's my drum track, and I can adjust the volume just this way, just like you would if you were in a recording studio. And so you have just some different options there. Now let me show you. I think this will excite you as a guitar player. Oh, the last thing on this, the bass track, and I mentioned, I think I mentioned this before, but I don't play bass through a bass guitar. I'm actually playing this on a keyboard. So each of these little dashes are actually just little MIDI signals that were being received from the keyboard. I use the MIDI out on the keyboard going to the MIDI in on the audio interface, which goes into the laptop. So that's how I always record the bass parts. I don't actually play them on a bass. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The biggest reason is that I can adjust them very easily. And so these options up here, like if I click on the scissors, which means you're in edit mode, I can come up here and these are all the notes. You can hear them when I click on them. If I want to adjust them, I can just literally click and drag them to where I want them to be. So when I make a mistake, and I often do, this is how I can adjust them. You also have the option to, if you select everything, there's an option to quantize notes. And what quantize does, if you can see when I selected it, it puts everything right on the beat. So if you were a little behind in some places or whatever, you can adjust that and by hitting quantize. And then you can even adjust the quantize. You can say, you can be more accurate or less accurate by these different settings. But anyway, that's how I do the bass. Now let me show you the guitar real quick, which is really cool. And a lot of these features are built into GarageBand, so you can do a lot of this. You can play around with GarageBand and get a lot of the same stuff. But when I come up to I select the guitar track, I have all of these options, and I have these options, by the way, on every track. I can apply different settings to drums and keyboards and things. But what's nice on the guitar is there's an amp one, and if I click on this, this gives me all my different amp options. And so if I want to have a British combo, which I use a lot, which is kind of like a Vox amp, I use this. If I want a like a Marshall type sound, you can tell they kind of geared or designed these to looks like a Marshall half stack. But that's what you have, all these built-in amps, and each amp, so here's your like typical blackface Fender looking thing, and you can even come over here and adjust where the microphone is in relation to the speaker and get different sounds. I can change the cabinets if I want to use that head with a brown face cabinet. You can see the cabinets changing here. Look at all these options. It becomes overwhelming because you can build whatever sound you want, and the sounds are pretty good. I can also play with all the settings. All these dials actually do turn. I can flip things on and off, and so here's your EQ on this head. There's a reverb. Here's some effects. So lots of different options. It's just really cool. Now, in addition, if that's not cool enough, in addition to that, you also have a complete pedal board. So if I click on this pedal board, I can build a pedal board with all these pedals and get just about any effect that you want. So if you wanted fuzz, for example, you could drag this guy and bring him over into the chain. By the way, to get rid of a pedal, you just click on them, drag them up here, and they just go away. But I can turn pedals on and off this way, and I can adjust these dials. And so you just have endless possibilities when you look at all the different amps and then all the different effects here. Now, not all of them they're not as good as having the real thing, but in a lot of cases they are. It just depends. Like the echoes and delays and things, I think they sound great. I mean, you're not going to be able to tell a lot of difference. Some of the overdrives, they're not quite as good as having the real thing. But I use them for recording, and I think they're great. And as a guitar player, this is like Christmas to a lot of people because you just have all these pedals that right at your fingertip. This is cool. This spin box, it gives you like a Leslie cabinet type rotating speaker simulation. Cool stuff. So let me just show you what some of those sound like. If I were to, you can see I've completely changed the sound. So I had it on a very simple, very quiet, and I don't know what I've done here actually it's probably this pedal. So we'll get rid of, in fact, I'm going to turn the pedal board off and just see what the amp itself sounds like. Let's go back. There we go. So we go back into the amp, and I can change, it sounds a little bassy on my end, so I can back off the bass. I can come over here and add some more reverb. Check this out. You can see just turning up the reverb. turn it off completely. So anyway, just lots and lots of different different effects and settings. And this is the software that I use to create those jam tracks every week. And like I said, I always start with the beat per minute. So start with your tempo, then lay down. This is how I do it. Then I lay down the guitar track, and then I lay down the drum track, and then I fill in all the gaps after that. And it doesn't usually take me that long. I can usually go in with a concept and have a completed jam track in about I don't know, maybe an hour to hour and a half. Oh, one other setting, and people have asked me this: how do you extend them out? Because they go for about 4 minutes. So in this scenario, the guitar part ends right here. Let me let you hear how it ends. We'll get right to the end here, and it's just going to stop. You can see it stops right here. So what I do, what's nice about this software is, if you just hover over this, you get this option, this little icon, or this thing shows up. And what that means is you can loop. So I can literally click and drag, and I can loop that guitar part as far to the right as I want. So I usually make the jam tracks around 4 minutes, and so I just keep dragging it out as far as I want, and it'll loop, and it's seamless. So when you hear it here, you'll hear what I mean. So it just keeps going. Now I do the same thing for drums, drag that out. I do the same thing for the bass guitar, and I do the same thing for, where are you, bass? There you are. I'm sorry, for the organ, and then I do the same thing for the bass guitar. And I just drag each track out as far as I want, and that way I only have to play through it once. So I'm not trying to be perfect for 4 minutes. That would be really hard to do. And you can see it just loops right there, and you never can even tell the difference. Now the only last thing I would say is this orange bar will let you play back. So if I just hit play, it's going to play just that orange bar, and it's just going to keep looping whatever's in the orange bar. And you can set how far you want the orange bar to go. Now what I do is I drag it all the way to the end, so it'd be all the way down to the 4 minutes, and whatever is selected in this is what gets exported when you create your final export and make your MP3. So I just go up here to File, and it's called Bounce in most audio software. And you go to Bounce, and I choose this project or selection. The orange bar is the selection, or is the section, not selection. And then I have the option to save it as an MP3 file, and I can adjust the MP3 settings. But that's how that works. And so when I hit OK, it's going to bounce through and take all of the levels and everything that I've set here in Logic, and it's going to export them and create an MP3 file. So that's my process. That's what I do every week. And it took me a while to learn it, but now that I've got it down to, like I said, I can do the whole thing in an hour and have a whole new jam track. So hopefully that's helpful to some of you out there.